Dear friends, in this last part of conference presentation, we will take up some important insights and try to answer some general queries which people and students send from across the world. Let's see. One of the important point which generally people miss out or get confused with is when a planet aspects Rahu or Ketu, does it pick up the negative influences of Rahu Ketu? There can be two scenarios. The first is when Jupiter, Mars, or Saturn, planets having special aspects, aspect Rahu or Ketu one way, and the impact is not mutual. In that scenario, if Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn, if such aspecting planet is a benefic planet, then they do not pick the maleficence of Rahu or Ketu. In a way, they pacify the negative influence of Rahu or Ketu. So, but if the aspect is mutual, the affliction is mutual, then it doesn't have any benefit for the person. It is a negative combination, it's an affliction, and the affliction of the nodes takes precedence. Another thing is, a query generally people raise is whenever a functional malefic planet is placed in a malefic house and it afflicts other planets or houses, what happens? So it carries, whenever a functional malefic planet is placed in a malefic house and it afflicts other planets or houses, it carries the negative influence of both the houses. Take, for example, the planet Jupiter for Taurus. It is the 8th lord, most malefic planet. It is placed in the 6th house. So 6th house is also a malefic house. So it is placed on the MEP of 6th house. So it will be aspecting 10th house, 12th house, and 2nd house. So it will afflict 10th house with both kind of things, obstructions as well as the 6th house significations, the litigations, conflicts, difference of opinion. So its affliction becomes quite grave. Another example we can take is, for example, the 6th lord placed in the 8th house or 8th lord placed in the 6th house causes an exact affliction to the lord of 4th house. So prolonged miseries, conflicts, health problems, financial difficulties, obstructions, and serious setbacks to self and parents, father. So when a malefic planet is placed in its own house, it protects its house. But if a malefic planet is placed in another malefic house, it is a disaster. It becomes doubly malefic. It has now the strength or the power of two malefic significations, two malefic houses, and it afflicts, its affliction is very bad. Another important thing is the afflicting power of functional malefic planets. Many people think that when a functional malefic planet is weak, it is good. That when it afflicts, it is not strong, so its affliction would be less. Actually, that is not true. The afflicting power of functional malefic planet does not get reduced due to its weakness. The afflicting power of functional malefic planet increases when it is placed in a malefic house or it is under affliction itself. In which scenario it increases? It increases when it is placed in a malefic house or it is itself is under affliction. Then it is able to cause a special affliction as well. So these are, when a weak malefic is there, it is afflicting power remains there, same. Its affliction would be as severe, but the handicap is that it becomes weak itself. Say Jupiter, the 8th lord, is at 0 degrees. and placed in the 10th house. So in 10th house, suppose the MEP of the ascendant is 2 degrees. So it is afflicting 10th house. It is afflicting 10th house and giving problems, obstructions to the profession of the native. But planet is at 0 degrees. So it is not, even if it is placed in 10th house, it is well placed. But for its general significations, the things it rules, like the education, the higher education, learning, support and blessings of elder brother, they also get reduced. Because when Jupiter, dignity of degree wise Jupiter is 0 or very less, or in extreme old age, its power to afflict would be same. You can't measure it on a scale of 1 to 10. Power of affliction is there, but its own general significations, it's not able to, was both positive, negative, both positive significations of 8th house, the inheritance part, the health of father, the longevity of father, it is not able to protect. It is not able to protect the person in case of accidents, severe injuries, and it is not able to support him in higher education and the achievement of good admission in a good university, or finding a true guru also. So another important point people raise is when the natal moon is afflicted by Rahu or Rahu-like planet, or it is badly placed in a Rahu-like house. Rahu-like houses are 8th and 12th. Rahu-like planets are planets ruling 8th house and 12th house. The person becomes more sensitive to transit afflictions, especially to unfavorable incidents. That is quite true, because moon is the state of mind. Moon is the thought process. Whenever it is afflicted by Rahu, or it is weak and badly placed as well, the person is very sensitive nature wise also. He gets annoyed or gets into problem, seeing other people in problem. He empathizes more, and he or she is emotionally very you can say vulnerable. People can take benefit of their emotions. So whenever moon is afflicted by Rahu or Rahu like planet and weak, the person is very sensitive. And health wise also, this tells upon a lot, because moon rules the fluids, WBC of the blood, the immunity power. When moon is weak or afflicted by Rahu or Rahu like planet, so many persons I have seen who get allergies, autoimmune disorders. Such vulnerable moon makes one susceptible to autoimmune disorders from a very young age. They are easy, they catch infections easily because their immunity levels are poor. Their moon signifies lungs also, so lung function also weakens over time quickly than people who have strong moon. So general queries. In general queries, the first one is, what will be the level of affliction if a planet is caught up in the nodes as opposed to being afflicted by either Rahu or Ketu? That is, we dealt in the first slide also. The affliction is just double. When it is being afflicted by both Rahu and Ketu, that means it is in conjunction with either Rahu or Ketu. So that means the results of sub-periods of the planet involved, Rahu and Ketu, all will be causing suffering. In case only Rahu Ketu are afflicting, then sub-periods involved would be of the planet and Rahu or Ketu. So only 2 sub-periods will be bad. Here all 3 would be bad. And the planet's strength also gets down quickly. Another query, general query, is are the aspects of Rahu from malefic houses more malefic than from other houses? Yes, it is true. When a malefic planet or a Rahu or Ketu are placed in a malefic house, then they cause affliction. The significations are severely afflicted because they carry their own negativity and negativity of the house where they are placed. So coming to Rahu Ketu again, do Rahu and Ketu become weak when combust? Here, the thing is, they are uh, points in the zodiac. They are not actual heavenly bodies physically present. You can't see Rahu and Ketu in the sky like, or with the telescope like you can see Venus, Mercury, Jupiter or Saturn. So when they are very close to sun, that means they are causing eclipse kind of situation. So it is the sun who gets harmed in that conjunction. Rahu Ketu do not suffer from combustion. It is the sun which suffers from eclipse kind of situation. It says, what is the extent of to which Rahu is colored by the house it is, or the planet with which it is placed, whether in a 5 degrees conjunction or a wider one? The reply to this is, if Rahu is in a malefic house, the maleficness is added to its general impact. But when it is in a good house, its maleficness is less. And if it is not closely afflicting the house, then it generally gives good results also. Rahu gives you material wealth, enjoyment, worldly pleasures. So material growth is there. Person earns a lot, money flow is more, he is enjoying luxuries. So Rahu and rise of the person is quick. Rahu makes you rise quickly. Another query is, Ketu is supposed to be the liberator or moksha karka. Whether Ketu is a liberator or moksha karka in reality. So this is a question. This is one belief, but certainly it is karka for miseries as well. So why people turn towards God to moksha? For many people, you will find a great percentage of people who are suffering, who have lots of sufferings in their worldly life, in marriage, in relationships, in profession, or they are not able to do something. They also turn to God, turn to spirituality. So for those, Ketu is a moksha. Ketu takes them to that path, which ultimately turns the native to faith and spirituality and God. So the reason of the native going towards the spiritual kind or moksha, on the path of moksha at an early age of life, is the impact of Ketu sometimes. Another question is, will a person with the weak Ketu would be stuck in the Kali Yuga? Would that not be materially good for the person, while bad in the sense of what the sages meant for the ultimate destiny of a soul? The reply to this query is on the basis of Ramayana. In Kali Yuga, for liberation, leaving materialism is not compulsory. Like in Hindi, they say, Kali Yuga keval naam adhara, naam japat bhavtarye sara. That Kali Yuga, you need not be go to forest and meditate for years together. You can continue to live in your house, in family, and then also you can achieve moksha by leading a virtuous life. So those leading a life of honesty and doing their duty to their family, society and humanity as a whole do get mental peace, which ultimately leads to liberation. This is my belief. My father believed in these things, and based on my experience of ancient literature like Ramayana, these things are true. Another thing is, what kind of credence do you give to the idea of nodes being about the past and future of the soul's growth? Yes, that's true. We consider that lesser the number of afflictions in the chart, faster is the advancement of soul's journey. So when Rahu and Ketu are causing less afflictions in the chart, that means the karma, the negative karma balance of the person is less, and he or she is growing on the path of spiritual journey faster. So this is also true for nodal afflictions, especially for Rahu Ketu. Yes, it's true. Now they say, Which house or planet to look for pets? So the answer to this query is fifth house, because pets is an emotional and benevolent kind of thing. So fifth house and Venus. Could you please explain how the 10th house is connected with the next birth? Yes. A strong 10th house is what? 10th house is karma. And when you base the next birth theory, it's on the basis of karma. The karma you do in this birth, you get born in the next birth on the basis of the karma balance of this life. So a strong and unafflicted 10th house promises a comfortable next birth, because you are able to do good deeds in this life, which are carried forward to your next birth. One of the things is, does the classical rule stipulates that malefic planets in malefic houses are well placed and capable of producing good results. Does this apply in essay? Not completely, but sometimes yes, only when the situation is only when they are placed in their own Multikona houses. Suppose 8th lord is Jupiter. So Jupiter placed in 8th house, being 8th lord in its Multikona house, it's good. But it's not true for Jupiter when placed in a Capricorn in 8th house. So that is a bad. Another question generally people ask is, for example, can't the Lord of 12th house result in financial solvency through loss of debts during operating period if well placed and aspected? No, it is rather the other way around. It is say when Lord of 12th house is weak, so it will not give losses. It's the other way around. When Lord of 12th house is weak, it is not able to protect you from losses. 12th house, strong 12th house, if Multrikona sign is there, so strong 10th lord is necessary for protection of losses. Suppose somebody is indulging or doing speculative investment, and if 12th lord is strong, he stands to gain. His position is protected in such transactions. Otherwise, if they are weak, there are further losses through avoidable expenses. Comforts are not there, and a person goes to foreign lands, then also there also person is not able to earn well or live well comfortably. So to interpret it correctly, we can say it means the significations of the 12th house are involved in disputes and losses. So 6th to 12th, 12th to 6th, that is not a beneficial combination. We saw in the first and second part of the presentation as well. Now we come to the last point, the types of devotion. So leading a virtuous life is very necessary for astrologers, because it helps them develop a good character. And when you are doing this pure consulting, pure jobs like astrology, advising people, so you have to, if you are pure in your heart, then your predictions, your analysis is likely to be more correct and proper. So in Ramayana, there is an instance of Navada Bhakti. 9 types of devotions are prescribed in Ramayana. And in that, in the end, Lord says, I am telling you 9 kinds of devotion. Even if you have one, even if you practice one, you are dear to me. So let's see what 9 types of devotions Lord Vishnu or Lord Rama has preached in Ramayana. Number 1 is the company of learned persons. So that means you should be more and more in company of learned person, and not so you should be away from bad company. So when you are in company of learned person, you increase your knowledge, learn good things, good behavior, good habits. Second thing is deep interest in divine talks, discourses. That's true. When you take interest in God, when you take interest in spirituality, meditate and listen to the discourses and good talks of learned persons, when you are in their company, So that is also a kind of satsang. Actually that is called a satsang. So company of learned person and deep interest in divine talks, it's a combination, is called satsang. So third thing is serving one's guru without feeling of pride. That is a prime thing. In Ramayana, many instances where have been mentioned where the disciple was having pride that he knows more than the guru. So one should be docile and submissive to the guru from whom one has learned the art. So serving one's guru without doing charity or without getting a feeling of pride, like I am doing something which is very good on my part and I'm obliging. It's not that. One is always obliged by the guru. And then another fourth kind of devotion is praising the Lord with clear heart, selfless. Like when you sing the prayer or you praise the Lord, but in the heart you are expecting something in return, like you are doing with some selfish purpose, which is not that is not good. So if you do that on a regular basis selflessly, then things come to you. It's not that you want to buy a particular car and you start worshipping goddess Lakshmi, and once you get the car you forget it. So if you are worshipping goddess Lakshmi, keep on doing that, so prosperity comes to you naturally. Fifth point is strong belief in Lord's word. So one should believe what is written in your what your guru tells or what God has told in Gita or Ramayana. So one should believe it. One should not dispute those things or try to find logic. So one should have a firm belief in what God has said. So sixth point is less material interest. One should not get too much involved in materialism. Good character, keep good character and don't get too much involved in material things. To a level it is okay, but not too much involvement. Seventh point is treat everybody as a divine creature. No hate. That means you should not have hate or malice for any person, any creature, because you treat this whole universe, all creatures as a creation of God. So every object or every living being or everything has the sanction of God, that God wants it to be like this. The second last one is contentment in what you have or get out of your reasonable efforts. So one should be content in what one has got, and one should put efforts, reasonable effort. Do not hanker after material things that you are spoiling your health and running after money and everything. So you should put reasonable efforts and be content what you get. And then also at that point also you should think about others' welfare also. You should think of giving back to the society, not that you are earning. My FDs should be like this, my stocks should be like this. So you should be philanthropic, compassion. So the last thing is simplicity. Be simple. Don't complicate your life. Simple concepts, believe in things, have some principles. So belief in God and fairness. You should have fair dealings with everybody. So these are 9 key points which cover almost all aspects of life. And if one starts practicing even one, so rest follow automatically. If you are doing satsang, then you do not have extra time for different other things. So you follow all those things automatically. So with these words, we come to the end of the presentation. This presentation was presented at the IIPA conference, 13th IIPA conference, and it is It is contained in 4 parts on this, and this is the final one. So thank you.